Hello, welcome back. My name is Ari, and today we are doing my final shelf in my Read Your Own TBR monthly challenge. But I say shelf with air quotes because it's not a shelf. I am reading ebooks and audiobooks because those are backlists that you don't see in front of you, so they tend to pile up and go unread. This is kind of a shorter week than all the others because I think the end of the month is like Thursday instead of Saturday, how I've been doing it. But if I go like a couple of days into April, I'm not going to be super mad about it. But my goal is to do 2 ebooks, 2 audiobooks minimum. Audiobooks are probably going to be 3, and I'm going to tell you why here in a second. But let's start with the ebooks that I plan to read. Now, these are just plans. They're not set in stone. Things may change, and I might end up reading something else. But for now, the first book I want to read is Ink and Bone by Rachel Caine. I don't know a whole lot about this other than it's a fantasy series and it's about books or libraries or something. I mean, it's got like library vibes here on the cover. This is one of like the oldest books that I have on my Kindle that wasn't lost when my last Kindle died. For those of you who don't know, I had some books on my old Kindle Fire, and when it died, they just never made it to my new Kindle Fire. I don't know how to get them back, so those books don't exist for me anymore as far as I'm concerned, but this is one of the oldest ones that actually made it over. So I'm gonna read it, and hopefully I enjoy it. The second book that I am going to read from my Kindle is not super old. I think I bought it last year, but I realized last week when I DNF'd Harlem Shuffle, I haven't filled my Buzzwordathon prompt for a book with a location in the title. So for another book that I'm going to read, it's a short story collection by Grady Hendrix, and it's got a long title. So Dead Leprechauns and Devil Cats, Strange Tales of the White Street Society. And White Street is a place. It's a location. It's a street. So that's what I'm going to read. This is a short story collection. Basically, Grady Hendrix is a very cool dude, and he was noticing that history is very whitewashed, and we only really learn about like the good things about white people in history, to like respect their memory and stuff like that. So he's made a short story collection like mocking the stupidity of white men. And I'm like, I like Grady Hendrix as a horror writer anyway, and if we're gonna mock historical white men, sure, that sounds fun. So those are the 2 ebooks that I plan to read. Make a little room. Make a little bit more room on my Kindle. Not that I need more room on my Kindle, but the audiobooks. So the first audiobook that I am going to read, this is kind of like the bonus audiobook because this is the audiobook that I've been kind of like listening to whenever I've been doing something like taking the dog to the dog park or whatever. So this one is almost done, but we're just going to talk about it here because why not add it into here, finish it up this week, and then add it into here. But this is a nonfiction book called The Week by David Henkin. It's nonfiction on why the 7-day week exists. Like, that is not a natural event, but like everybody lives their life based on like a 7-day week, and you're more likely to know that today is what is today? Today's a Sunday that I'm recording this, so I'm more likely to know that today's a Sunday than what date it is. And you live your life in a week-long cycle, but why? Where did this come from? And that's what this book is about. The second audiobook I have so you guys know how I've been just burnt out, just burnt out, and I need something completely effing ridiculous to read, and that's what this is. This is like bringing me every ounce of joy in existence. And it is an audiobook called Run Rose Run by Dolly Parton and James Patterson, right? That's his last name. So James Patterson is obviously like a really, really well-known thriller writer, and then Dolly Parton's Dolly Parton. just come on. So this is about an up-and-coming country music star, and she's running from something because it's a thriller. But the audiobook is full cast. Dolly Parton actually reads one of the roles in here, and then I think the main character of Rose is done by Kelsey Ballerini. So, but it's a huge ass full cast. So this is just bringing me all of the joy in my life, and I won't hear otherwise. The final audiobook that I am going to do this week is a very, very short one, and it is Recitative. Say that 5 times fast, by Toni Morrison. This is, I think, the only short story Toni Morrison ever wrote. From my understanding, you have 2 perspectives in the short story, and one of the characters is white and one of the characters is black, and you don't know which one is white and which one is black, and throughout the book you kind of like focus on trying to figure out which character is white and which character is black, but that's not the point of the story. But like the story leads you to focus on that. So it sounds interesting, and Toni Morrison is a fantastic writer, so let's do that one. It's also like, I think it's like under 2 hours on 1x speed, and I don't listen to anything at 1x speed. Okay, so I've already finished 2 books. I had a very, very good reading Sunday. The first one is an audiobook, or the first one I'm going to talk about is an audiobook, and it is, let me scooch over here so my books have enough room. It is The Week, and I don't remember who it's by, some guy. That's all I got. This is basically an audiobook about like why we have a 7-day work week. That it's not situated in any sort of like cosmic or religious background. And I know somebody's gonna come into my comments and be like, but God created the world in 7 days. That is a translation that was established after the 7-day Sabbath already existed. So that's like historical Bibles did not have a 7-day, God created the earth type thing. So yeah, that translation was established already after the 7th day. It wasn't work week, but a 7-day Sabbath was a thing. Now, Jewish people did come up with a 7th-day Sabbath, and that is one of the many reasons that a 7-day week exists. But it's just really interesting. Like the whole thing was just really interesting in concept. There were like bits and pieces of this book that were interesting, but is this an almost 300 page chunk of an interesting thing? No, it is not. There is a lot of information that me as a general consumer did not need to know, but if you're ever doing a paper on this would be a really, really good book to grab. If this was a physical book, I would have not finished it. Let's put it that way. This this lent itself well to being an audiobook. If you're super interested in this, I would say pick it up as an audiobook, or like go read a wiki page because that'll give you the basic information you need. This is like a short paper, short speech, kind of interesting, maybe a nice 10-minute YouTube video kind of interesting. This is not a 300-page book kind of interesting, if that makes sense. I'm gonna give this 3 stars because it set out to do what it needs to do, but it wasn't my favorite. So moving right along to something that I did enjoy more, and that was Ink and Bone by Rachel Kane. I've had this on my Kindle forever, and like I had a vague idea of the premise, but the premise was not anything of whatever was in my head. It was like, oh, there's a library. This is YA dystopian. Oh my god, I love YA dystopian. So I was very, very happy to get into this and read some YA dystopian. So this is like alternate universe sci-fi fantasy, and the Library of Alexandria has never burned. So it still exists, and it, in modern day, or the equivalent to our modern day, the library basically like controls all information, where the original of every book is in the library. People can consume books, like you can consume the information in the book by having like a blank is what it is, and to me it's an e-reader, right? So everybody has their own e-reader. They can request whatever books that they want from the library, and then they can pursue it that way. But there's a bunch of factions in this universe that are against the library controlling all of information, because obviously there are books that are missing, or black books or whatever. Like, they're controlling information and not everybody actually has access to every book, and then the library can see what you're reading through these books, and you can like write in it. It works kind of as a cell phone and an ebook, because you can like send emails and messages to other people through your book, right? We follow a kid who is the son of a book smuggler named Jess. The kid's named Jess, not the book smuggler, and he gets the opportunity to go train at the library. And his father pays for him to do this, wants him to do this because it'll give like another connection. He could potentially steal some books, or like give him a heads up on like raids or whatever. So sends him off to training, and then the training is a little bit more intense than you would think that a librarian would need, and so it's like super action packed. This like big adventure happens, people fall in love, and one thing that you don't typically see in YA that I really liked in this is there's death. People like die. So that's like high stakes, things like that I really like. So I expected to read this in like little bits in between like audiobooks and other stuff over like 3 or 4 days, and I read the whole thing in one night. Oops. It was very good. I'm gonna give it 4 stars because there are some pretty significant plot holes and some situations where you're just like, I don't think that's particularly realistic. People wouldn't act like that kind of thing. But overall, I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to continue with the series because I like me some YA dystopian. All right, final update on the last 3 books that I read. To be fair, 2 of them were very, very short. But let's start with, what is it? Devils and Leprechauns, Strange Tales of the White Street Society by Grady Hendrix. This short story collection has a really, really cool premise, and I think I'm going to actually use a lot of Grady Hendrix's actual words to talk about this instead of my own, because he does it more eloquently than I do. So basically, Grady Hendrix was a history major, and he sees all of these historical white men portrayed in this like shining light of greatness in media, but historically knows that these men were flawed and did really stupid, really hurtful, hateful, racist, sexist, etc. things. And so he was kind of disgusted by the fact that all of these men are glorified in media when they should not be glorified because they weren't good people. Our whitewash history presented these great white men in carefully edited versions that preserved their nobility but aligned their attitudes towards child labor, racial difference, inflicting violence, and destroying the environment that would be absolutely unpardonable to modern readers. It's an uncomfortable fact that angels and devils often reside in the same 19th century skin. And then he goes on later that this work of fiction is to remind readers that history is dangerous, that we share a common humanity only after a long struggle, and that every hero stands on a pedestal made of corpses. This is a short story collection from the perspective of wealthy white men. Specifically, like, there's 2 characters and they're doing different stories. And they do really evil things, but they come out on top because they're white men. And it's very Don Quixote style of writing, where it's just short little stories where the white man, or where these guys are doing like stupid shitty things, but they come out on top at the end at the detriment of pretty much every person around them. In practice, I really, really liked this idea. In execution, it wasn't for me. I don't think this is some of Grady Hendrix's best work. The stories just, they felt icky when you're reading them. Like, I understand logically that Grady Hendrix is really, really good at writing from the perspective of bad people and then putting you in their head so you can kind of see why they've chosen to do this. While still understanding that their actions are bad or evil or whatever. But in this context where it was like the jokey Quixote style, it just isn't for me. And I was like, wow, these guys are just disgusting trash, and I hate reading this. I want to read happy things about women or children or people of color or anything except for this right now. So it's an interesting short story collection. It's super freaking short if you're interested in it. It just, in the end, was a 3-star because I liked the idea of what he was doing. I just didn't personally love the execution. Even though it was executed well, I just didn't like it, if that makes sense. Let's talk about the other short one next, which is Recitatif, say that fast ever, even one time, by Toni Morrison. And this is a re-release of the only short story that Toni Morrison ever wrote, and it has like an introduction to it, or a foreword, I don't know what they call it. The audiobook is really, really good because it has my favorite audiobook narrator, Bonnie Turpin, but I'm sure reading it physically would be just as good. Basically, what this is about is the short story follows like 2 women from when they meet in childhood until like later in life, and one character is black and one character is white, and both of them are really like focused on race throughout the story. I don't really want to say too much about the story because it is like very short. It's like 20 pages long total. Toni Morrison removes all racial identifiers from the book. You don't know which of the characters is white and which of the characters is black, and it is entirely impossible to figure it out. I mean, people have guesses and they'll say like, oh, this character is white because blah 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 blah, and apparently there's a study been done on it, and that if you're white you think the perspective character is white, and if you're black you think the perspective character is black. I'm going to tell you that I have no freaking idea which girl is which race, and the entire point of this book is the reader focuses on that fact, is like trying to figure out which girl is which race. But that's not, like, that has nothing to do with the book. It doesn't matter in the book, but it's just human nature to not know and try to figure that out. It's just like a really cool premise. Toni Morrison is a great writer. I highly recommend this just for the experience of it, if absolutely nothing else. And like I said, you could probably get it from your library. It's a very, I mean, Toni Morrison is a very prolific writer. I would recommend picking up the reprint if you can, because of the introduction. The introduction is very, very interesting and probably made the book more interesting. And then the final audiobook that I read was Run, Rose, Run by Dolly Parton and James Patterson. And this one, so this is about a woman who, you know from the opening chapter, she is on the run from something, but you don't know what it is. But she flees to Nashville and decides that she's going to become a famous country and music star, right? So the thriller plot is like she's gets attacked by men in blind alleys, and these guys are like looking for her, and it's super scary as like a woman and everything to think of things like that. But you don't really know why until the very end of the book, which I'm not going to spoil for you. But the other thing that you're following is like her love story with the guy she meets there, and then her success is a country music singer in Nashville, right? Let me just say that the plot and like the way things happen in this book, just entirely unbelievable. This girl will go to like meetings with executives or whatever, and they'll just be like, well, you're real pretty, but I don't know why we should sign you. You don't have like a whole lot of work ethic and blah, 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 blah. And they'll just kind of like be like, we agreed to take this meeting because another country music star hooked you up with this meeting, but we're not really interested. And then she'll pick up her guitar and sing, and everybody's like, you're the perfect singer ever. Of course we're going to sign you and give you anything you ever wanted. And it's just one of those things that's so, like, it's so unrealistically goofy. But it was still kind of fun. I don't know. I kind of read the whole book like laughing and giggling and thinking this is ridiculous and silly, and really enjoyed my experience with it. But I don't think it was meant to be a funny book, because there's a lot of things that like imply like sexual assault, domestic abuse, human trafficking, like drug use, suicide. Like, there's dark themes in this book, but it's funnier than like thrillery. Take that as you will. Like I said, I enjoyed my time with the book. if you do pick this up, I'm gonna have to say I recommend the audiobook because one of the characters is narrated in the audiobook by Dolly Parton, and that's worth anything to pay for the book. It's just to have Dolly Parton talk to you in your ear for a little while you're reading. It's one of the side characters, it's not the main character. The main character is narrated by another country music star, but I can't remember her name. I guess I could look it up. Kelsey Ballerini narrates the main character, Annie Lee Keys. And then Dolly Parton narrates another character, and it's got a full-on cast. So there's a bunch of other people. I just didn't recognize any names other than Kelsey Ballerini and Dolly Parton. So take that as you will. Do I think that you should go out of your way to go buy this book? No. Do I think that this is like a amazing book that everybody should read? No. Did I think it was really, really fun? Yeah. That is it for my final shelf. I actually ended up getting 5 books read this week, which is really funny because last week I got 1 and a DNF. So 5 books off my audiobook and Kindle backlist. Yay! Good for me. Thank you for being here for this video, and if you watched all of my shelves this month, thank you for joining me on this adventure of making some room on my TBR shelf. I will have, I think I'm doing a haul a week from the day you see this, and I will add some more books to my TBR shelf that I didn't mean to buy. If you made it this far in the video, you want to leave me a comment but don't really have anything to say, put me some sort of yeehaw emoji in the comments. We just talked about Dolly Parton's book. I'm wearing a shirt that says y'all. I bet you thought it said Yale, but it says y'all. So we need some yeehaw emojis down in the comments below. I will see you Tuesday for the monthly wrap up. Bye.